Good morning. We're almost afternoon, but not quite. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Helena Bodemiller-Evich. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Food Fix, which is a newsletter all about food policy in Washington and beyond. So any of you food policy wonks out there, feel free to check that out. I'm here to talk to a really great panel of experts across the supply chain about climate on the menu. And we're glad to see some of you here because we were just talking about how sometimes when you put climate or sustainability together with food, people don't always want to hear it as much as the nutrition stuff, and we're going to get into that. But we're glad you're all here. I think it's fair to say that there is a growing interest in thinking about sustainability and climate and how it intersects with food and agriculture, particularly with Gen Z, particularly with younger consumers. And there's a lot to unpack there. We have a great panel that really, I think, has a diversity of perspectives here, and we're going to get into some of the complexities. So to start us off right here, we have Steve Megami, who's the co-founder and CEO of Fruitist, which is a growing berry company. You maybe are familiar with are they jumbo blueberries?
Mostly.
Yeah, and I heard they're very good. I ran into someone today who was like, oh, I love those blueberries. We also have Kimberly Ratcliffe, a Texas cattle rancher and owner of Ratcliffe Premium Meats, which is a vertically integrated local company in Texas. And we're going to hear a lot about a very interesting model there. And then we have Kelly Whitaker, an award-winning chef and restaurateur who has restaurants in Denver and Boulder and Oklahoma City, and also runs a flour mill in Boulder, Colorado, which we're going to get into. So we have fruit, we have beef, we have flour, we have the kitchen perspective, we have a lot of different pieces of the whole landscape here that we're going to get into. So I just want to start off first by having each of you tell us just a little bit about what exactly you do, because we have a lot of different perspectives here, what it is you do and how you got into this work. So we're going to start with you, Steve.
Sure.
Yeah, how did you become a berry CEO?
Yeah, so I was towards the later end of the first decade of my career in private equity, deploying large-scale biofuel, clean fuel projects in unique locations in the world where we had cost advantages and production advantages in unique microclimates. And what I realized was those microclimates were super interesting if we applied the right elite varietals that were, again, climate aligned with them. And so saw an opportunity, thought berries had a huge upside potential to disrupt that what we call that berry roulette experience, where you have that crapshoot of a consistency, really a lack of consistency. And so I saw a large global market, and I thought we could really inspire healthy and enjoyable snacking and really unlock this as a healthy snack for the youth globally and also just for global populations. And I thought we could make it accessible, and I thought we could really disrupt the fruit aisle. So that was the kind of the vision and what got me into this.
Okay, Kim, next.
Yes.
You have you span corporate America, agriculture, farming.
Yes.
Just love everything about your
So I'll be honest, meat was not my original goal when I first came back. I worked for a financial institution in New York, and I resigned due to the true disconnect between the financial institution and the farming community. At that time, my dad upgraded to a couple thousand-acre ranch, and I thought I was going to come home and make sure it's generational. But when I came home to a community that's the largest Black ranching community in the United States. And I ended up getting these calls from my community, said, your dad bought into this community, you came home, and I can't get my kids to come home. So I started a nonprofit first, and that nonprofit's purpose was, let's celebrate this community to get the kids to come home. So I would throw parties. I would throw parties in the community, and that elevated it to the point of throw parties, but there is work. When you celebrate that, you have to do some work. So we would find a rancher, throw a party there and do some work. And I found out one of the biggest lacking was the market. A lot of times the market's the one thing that prevents you from really going to the next level. I had the ability to sell large quantity of cattle, so I would add the community's cattle to my load that I would sell to large order buyers. And from there, I end up taking some of their cattle and I end up feeding them out myself in my own little feed yard that we have on our operation. And from there, I started in farmers market and slowly created Ratcliffe Premium Meats. So my thing is, as I employ people there, I try to get all my resources there. I have my processor there. My community is very small. It's 700 people. The graduating class at a high school is 20 people. And it's very small. So there is no economic value there. So it starts with the economic value of the community, and then it expands to now I'm trying to sell it outside the community to keep the economic value valuable in the community. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Kelly, how do you start a flour mill? And
That's a good question. I'm still working on. So I have a lot of titles. Last year, James Beard awarded our group with a restaurateur award. I thought I was like, oh man, that would have been so cool to get like a chef award. Because I started really in search of craft. I was traveling around the world, like, really just loved the hospitality industry, loved serving and taking care of people. So that was a driver for me. And when I got out cooking communities across the world, I saw that, food was being looked at a lot differently than we look at it in the way that I was raised here in the States. And so this sort of localized farm to table, if you will, and, just kind of seeing this isn't what I grew up on. From there, just when you're trying to be really good at your craft and serve people really well, you start to look at like sort of what's standing in the way of that. So I became an impact chef early on. I started chasing kitchens where, the chef was involved in like protecting oceans or food pathways and working with, all kinds of different issues, or grandmothers in Italy. And it just, so a lot of these things that were showing up at the back door were sort of threatening my ability to do my job well. So I was just like, I got more and more involved. About 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, I moved from LA, where I was working on a lot of things pertaining to oceans and all of that, back to Colorado. And I said, well, what's the highest impact? What's the ocean of the land, now that I'm in Colorado? So, and I love cooking fish, and I love working. If I can have sushi and bucatini my whole life, I'm a happy person. So grains were like a natural fit. So I looked in like where were grains growing really well in like 1900s. I found books. I grabbed seed from different mills throughout the country, friends of mine at that time. And I went to a regenerative farmer and I said, can I take out your rotational crop of wheat? That their main crop was potato. Put the wheat in the ground, and and the rest just kind of spawned from there. I wasn't trying to start a flour company, but now our flour is out there. And we just finished our planting here in Colorado. We're in 5 areas. We just finished 800 acres, all regenerative, all organic. And this just kind of started from that moment of just like looking for better ingredients.
so I know all of you think about sustainability in different ways, and like whether or not you're calling it climate smart, or what was the phrase you were using? Net positive. Like you all have different ways of maybe talking about it. Like maybe it's more economic sustainability where you lead with it. Talk a little bit more about how you talk to the consumer, the end consumer, because so much of this is ultimately driven by like what consumers are willing to pay a premium for, or what they're just willing to buy. Like, we all have finite resources. How do you communicate whatever it is, whatever sustainability value you're focusing on? Like, how do you communicate that to consumers? I don't know if Steve, you want to talk.
Sure.
You went straight to like you were consumer facing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a parent spending way too much on berries. Like the berry budget for parents with small kids is obscene. But you're making a choice there in the berry section. And so you have to communicate something to that.
Absolutely.
To that
well, we view it as value for money. When you eliminate that berry roulette inconsistent experience, we think that you're getting value for money with
that
what
blueberry
we
is going to be
charge.
amazing.
You know that blueberry is going to be amazing. You know your kids are going to want to snack healthier, and that means a lot. There's a lot we do. So let's just maybe start from like the clamshell, the package. We're using top seal. We're eliminating in many examples. We're eliminating 90% of the plastic in our packaging. We are tracking. We have KPIs that we've set in a way that I think we're recognized as being one of the few that recognize that measures KPIs from the carbon standpoint in terms of efficiency of our operations and the irrigation efficiency, fertigation efficiency, transportation efficiency. So there's so much we do. And so there's the sustainability side of this from a carbon standpoint, and plastics is obviously key to that. And then there's the sustainability side from a environmental preservation standpoint. So preserving the natural habitat, we've won environmental awards for that. And then there's the social side, and that's a huge part of what our purpose has been about since the very beginning. When we started the business, we said we want to transform lives while we transform land. We were going and developing our farms around the world, and we've empowered a lot of women. Half our workforce are women. Many of them in the communities never had a formal job. The empowerment of bringing that formal paycheck home is massive. Some of these communities have had historical spousal abuse historically, and so empowering the woman to be the breadwinner is a big deal. So there's a whole bunch of examples, but in terms of the consumer, it is the packaging, it is the certifications. We're the only ones in our industry to have the Equitable Food Initiative certification, which is really transferring price from consumers to the workers, and it means a lot. A few cents per let's say per clamshell goes a long way for these workers in these communities and what they do for their families and their kids. So certifications, plastic, the carbon footprint are all examples of that.
Yeah. Kim, how do you talk about sustainability with consumers or students? I know you do a lot of work in the community to just talk about how to barbecue, how to cook, cook all the, how to throw very fun events with.
Yeah.
And how much of it is economic versus environmental? How do you think about those together?
I think being in the livestock cattle industry, we're probably one of the most attacked when it comes to environment whatsoever, because we are the gas from a cow, all we can get from A to Z.
Methane.
We are definitely attacked in so many ways. And I think for us, number one, is to tell them that we've been doing this and I want it generational. I'm not out here for my family to be one-time rancher. I'm out here to be here for years to come and let them know what we're trying to do on a daily basis is for the long run. And I really do preach that. Because I get cattle from so many operations, I don't necessarily have certifications. I don't necessarily anything attached to it because it becomes a barrier for me to my producers.
You're talking paperwork.
Right. So I'm more of like, what can we do? It's the core sustainable practices for my producers. And I translate that into celebration. I'm a big celebrator. I love to throw parties. I love, and it's expense cost, but don't get me wrong. But I am those kind of people that barbecue. Everyone loves barbecue. So I tell my story through barbecue. I do a lot of barbecue contests. I have a series called Meet Up. And it's Meet Up at the Ranch and Meet Up in Houston and Meet Up in Austin and Meet Up in San Antonio. And I do these pop-up meetup events. And I actually have either a professional pit master that I've gotten to really know. I'm working with some professional NFL players. I might have one of the NFL players come and meet up. And a lot of these NFL players have ag land. So they're able to help support what I'm trying to do. So for me, it's more of making it an experience. There's so many meat companies out there. You guys probably hear so many people in this area. And I'm one of those that I believe that our meat is good quality, right? But I think now we're concentrating on the story of how you get in that quality there. And that's what I'm concentrating on. It's the story of how the qualities get into your plate and doing that through experiences. One of the experiences that I have that I didn't talk about, I'm launching in September, is barbecuing. It's a male-dominated industry. You'll see males doing it all the time. So I'm starting a series called Women on Fire, inspiring women to grill, inspiring women in life, right?
What a great
title. So how can we inspire women? Because the women are going to be the ones that purchase my product. I need to inspire you not to be fearful of the grill. And what else are we fearful of, ladies? We're fearful of some other things. But if we start with the grill, then we can get over some of the other barriers. So a lot of my meat is more mission, as you can tell. And I think that's what the purchaser is going to look for, because they have so many choices and different meat products to buy. But if they remember Ratcliffe Premium Meats, it's doing all of this, they might buy mine over someone else's.
Yeah. It's like the celebration ends up being the marketing as well, communication.
Right.
Kelly, how do you talk about these various practices on your menus? Like, what terms do you use? Do you find everyone understand? Like, can you put regenerative? I guess regenerative is like kind of well known now, but like even 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, what are the terms you find that you can use that the consumer understands, that the person dining understands, and that also communicates what it is you're trying to do?
Well, I think before that step happens, as a cook, as a chef, I mean, I would argue like the best direct communication about your product is through flavor and deliciousness. Like, I would argue that probably a really good blueberry is maybe better sometimes than a certification to tell your story.
Right.
Like when you taste it, when you taste the meat, when you taste what we do in our restaurant. So coming into like, this moment, I think it just has to be there. There's so many products out there that might scream regenerative or go into the restaurant and say we're a farm to table restaurant, and then you leave and you're like, that was okay.
Yeah.
How does that, win people over? How are they going to tell their friends about, this place? I'd say we create a lot of curiosity. Like if it's so delicious, someone's at the table really enjoying it. I like to give space for them to, ask questions about it, because not everybody wants to hear about this. We've really started coining this idea around low intervention service, where it's like, let's just not be so preachy. So letting the product talk and like being able to give a really good answer. Like our teams are incredible. They'll just, you could go to our mill and talk to our miller, and if you want to nerd out, you can just nerd out.
I really
for
do. I'm
hours.
coming to this mill.
Yeah, you can. We will get as nerdy as you want about these things, but I think that's what I'm seeing at least, and I think we have many levels of consumers, right? All the way from we have Michelin awarded restaurants, very expensive. We're creating access of our flour through the Denver school system right now, different consumer, but it's kind of one and the same. We get letters from kids that are in the Denver school system saying, I've never had a cinnamon roll like this. We have this program where we have this going like once a week in different schools, and we get these letters, and it's like really, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like the kids are connecting because they're not in the pizza line, the hamburger line. They're getting this thing and they're going, why is this so different?
Yeah.
We're creating curiosity with them. We're creating curiosity with the Michelin guests, with the foodie. So it's kind of like the same thing. It really comes back to that. And then, being able to talk when it's appropriate, but they're going to remember a delicious piece of bread when it's right.
I always say stories add flavor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you hear the story, for some reason, it could taste better.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what you're saying is like it's
Right?
like you don't need
It
to
is,
like
and I always say
market
that.
it. It's not like you're not hitting people over the head with like, this is a climate smart cinnamon roll. You're like, this is the best cinnamon roll you've ever had. It's like
Correct.
different than anything you've ever tasted. And then you can be like, well, and this is why.
This is
because
why.
because the process is different. That is kind of a different approach though. I feel like so often in food marketing, it's about claims and, and really putting everything on the label and having it be, and you're kind of like, you're doing like stealth, kind of like stealth sustainability messaging in a way.
I'm not
And I don't
gonna
know
lie,
that the
though.
kids
Like,
know
when
what
I go out to buy a
regenerative.
bottle of wine, I do get suckered into a good label sometimes. A little
It's like
biodynamic.
it says biodynamic, it says regenerative, and it's also a cute label, like very
I'm
well
in.
designed.
I'm
Yeah,
in.
they got me. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. You mentioned the schools briefly. I want to talk a little bit about kind of food service and scale and how you get into certain, I guess get into different venues and before different types of consumers. How did you get the flour in the school system? Like, was that
Yeah, that was a
easy to
challenge.
do?
No,
Oh, no.
everything's a challenge with the mill.
Well, schools don't have a lot of
trying
money
to clean
spend on
grain on this level is a challenge, especially these varieties. But with that, we have an organization in Colorado called the Colorado Grain Chain. So we were finding partners that could come in, because our flour is some of the most expensive flour in the United States. It's stone milled, it's single varietal, it is all regenerative. Like it has this thing. We pay our farmers well. Every part of the whole system is costly.
It's like the opposite of commodity?
Exactly. So when we think about creating access for our product, we look for partnerships. We look for the school systems. There's funding and money out there in the right place. We had to get creative with that and say, hey, we want to do this. Can you purchase half the pallet of flour so that we can get this to a price that's reasonable for, it to get into the system. We also have to explain that, with flour, you're at 80% of the thing you're making is mostly water. So sometimes we have to teach a little math around that, because we maybe double the price, but on a very per unit basis, it's very different. So there's a lot of hurdles, you know. But again, I think what's been cool is like we see a desire for this. We're seeing results, and you know, there's a demand, if you will. So when there's a demand, we'll find a way, right?
Yeah, it's cool that you get messages from the parents being
Yeah.
like, I heard about the cinnamon
From the
roll.
kids.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
I
part
think
of
my 5-year-old left, but in the last session, someone mentioned ice cream, and he's like, where? And he just like took off. Now he's going to be asking me where his cinnamon roll is. I know you do a lot of work with HBCUs. And
Yeah, I work with a lot of historically
Yeah.
underserved universities, and I also work with schools themselves. And it started with a program at one of my local HBCUs called Agletics. How do you partner athletics with agriculture? And the main reason why it started there, if you go to many of these HBCUs, if you go to these large universities, they have nutrition centers all in their universities, but these D2s and HBCUs have no nutrition center. And I really do believe performance is based on nutrition. That really pushes them over the finish line. So how can I be part of that? Since I do a lot of feeding with some of the pre-draft players. Dallas is a big one, and I feed over 80 of the pre-draft players pre-prep meals that we create. And how can I put those in the HBCUs? So we're working on a huge initiative with that. It's a funding issue, but we're navigating that. But that is one of my missions. Is HBCUs and D2 schools, I think they could actually be the next level if we actually put nutrition in their program.
Yeah, Steve, what about you? What's your biggest barrier to scaling? I mean, it seems like your company's grown pretty quickly, but like, how do you get the blueberry that is delicious every time and has these great values behind it? How do you get that in every supermarket? Like, what's the barrier to doing that?
It's you know, so we've spent a number of years building the footprint around the world. We selected 8 countries, a number of locations in 8 countries around the world that we think are kind of the wonders of the world. We're there now. We've set up the footprint, the global footprint, and now it's about scaling those operations to scale the volumes. We've invested $600 million already, and there's a lot of our plantings are young still. So there's a lot of maturation to come. It takes 4 years usually to reach. I'm talking blueberries specifically right now. So it takes 4 years to get that maturation, to get the volumes up to peak
I'm sure VCs
capacity.
love hearing that your blueberries are going to take 4 years to sell any of them.
We love the visibility. So I mean, short answer is we are continuing to invest and to reinvest into expanding acreage and expanding production. And what's fun is we're figuring out how to get greater productivity without compromising quality or shelf life or food safety or worker welfare. So we're able to, we think we have a nice blueprint now to scale. And so we will be, we have a lot of visibility into rapid growth for years to come.
So I know you're talking about, I mean, there's no way for the berry supply chain to not be global just based on how like we now expect berries to be available the entire year. How do you mentioned KPIs around, or earlier you mentioned KPIs around, carbon footprint and all that. How do you deal with that, with like shipping? Like what is, I guess, like the biggest thing you have to manage for when you're thinking about keeping that carbon footprint down? Because that's one of the things that when you do local, you don't have to worry about that side as much. There might be other things you do locally that are smaller scale and might have more carbon footprint because they don't have the economies of scale, but like you're going to have to ship your blueberries from far away.
So we're shipping locally where we have local production, but the markets, the U.S. can only.
Some in the U.S. too.
Yeah, we have farms in Oregon. We have local organic in Oregon, but the U.S. can't. To supply the northern hemisphere during its off season when it physically cannot supply itself, we bring in from the southern hemisphere and from locations outside of Europe, North America, and let's say China. We bring in product, but we do it efficiently, and we have very little shrink. So when you have little shrink, by definition, when you don't have a loss of when you don't have spoilage, so we have virtually no spoilage because we're picking so optimally for the combination of shelf life in addition to quality of eating experience.
So you're not shipping berries that no one's going to eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a big problem in the
I didn't know that was a
industry.
big problem.
It's a huge problem.
The berries are just there, right?
So,
and my kids want them.
Yeah. So your carbon footprint's a lot higher
okay.
if half your product or a third of your product's going to waste. In addition, it's a lot about the investment in that precision precision production, meaning irrigation, fertigation, all the precision around how we do this means savings, resource efficiency. And so that's part of the equation as well, is resource efficiency. So every year we're reducing water, maybe not by a huge percentage, but these are nice increments. And every year we're getting smarter about more and more biological controls and how we're being smarter in terms of inputs and fertigation, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And that's all saving cost too. So it's like kind of win-win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kim, I want to get in a little bit more to the economics of meat production, because one of the things I've noticed is that there's more ranchers that are going like direct to consumer.
Right.
I think it's fair to say a lot of that's like you're going to keep more of that margin versus like the commodity. Well, it's not just beef. Like the entire meat industry, it's a commodity business, and you're kind of a price taker. And there's been a lot of challenges with like rising input costs for farmers, and we are in a super stressed economic moment for farmers of like all kinds.
Right.
How are you thinking through, like, I guess, I don't know if you're rebuilding models, but thinking through like the economic model has to work for you to be able to partner with the ranchers in your area, keep them going, and also maybe, I don't know if change practices is the right, incentivize different practices. Like, how do you do that?
So the economic model right now is really stressful on the cattle industry. Number one, the numbers are the lowest and it's been in a long time.
Which like doesn't make sense because the demand is really high.
Right. The demand is high, but because the prices are so high, people aren't keeping their cattle back.
Yeah. So the herd is the
for example,
yeah.
the price, like I just bought this morning I bought a truckload of cattle from an operator. I paid 40% higher than I did last year.
Wow.
They're
There's
not going
less
to keep their
supply.
cows. They're not going to keep their heifers back, which are going to give them new cattle. They're not going to keep any of that if you're making 40% more.
Yeah.
Because of the economy. It's like I'm making all this profit now. I'm not holding anything back. So for me, it's definitely, I guess, a different economic scale for me now, right? It is requiring me, I'm not going to lie, it's requiring me to re-strategize on how I package things and how I'm marketing things, and ultimately, how do I look at my 5-year plan? Because this was not in my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
What the economy is right now was definitely not I did not plan on spending 40% more last year to today. So
most businesses don't necessarily deal with that type of job.
right, and I guess I didn't, and I'll be honest, I didn't have 40% cushion.
Yeah.
For that profitability, right? So it's changing my model a little bit. It might be changing on where I distribute now, right? I am not doing. I make more bang for my buck selling to the San Antonio school right now, believe it or not, than I would selling individually sometimes. Because of that profit margin. So I'm now looking more truckloads going down the road than I am looking for my packages online.
Yeah.
Because of the economic scale now. So for me, I'm still buying the cattle the same, but my emphasis on where I'm marketing is different. Because I have to make that profit margin higher, and I only can make it higher by a truckload than getting 100 orders a week or 200 orders a week off of individuals buying. So I don't know if it's and I'm still educating consumer. I still want you to go there, but I'm not pitting my bangs for my buck and my marketing dollars on that. I'm putting my mains and my marketing dollars on finding where I can find the largest amount of truckloads heading down there so I don't have to keep it in storage. I can get it out of my way immediately.
Yeah.
And it might not be a bad strategy that is making me do this, right? It might actually be the model that I have to go with and still have the smaller consumer side and really go to the larger side. So it strategically just changed my mind. That's what most farmers are doing. They're doing farm to table, and I get it. But at this point, it's more profitable for some of those farm to table to sell their cattle immediately than keep it in the long run because the inputs and stuff are so high.
It is wild to think where we're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it takes a while for cattle to be mature. Like it's not they're not widgets.
And I'll give an
right?
example. So I was with, and I'm not getting too political. I was with the farm to table program that was through the previous administration, right? And for me, I was doing 5 to 6 truckloads a week. Some of them every 2 weeks to schools, to food banks, and everything. But when you get a call to say you only have a month left on that contract, that's where it gets difficult. Now, where am I putting all that funding and all that other stuff. So when you do get that, you start changing your mindset on how you're going to distribute.
Yeah.
things.
And what Kim's referencing, for those of you who are maybe not following every twist and turn here, the USDA under this current administration canceled about $1 billion worth of local food funding. I think that's what you're talking about. And this was funding that was specifically targeted at trying to get more local farm products into schools and also food banks. And this has been so deeply unpopular. I think everywhere the ag secretary now goes, she gets asked about this, because there's so many small and medium-sized farms that are like, we were really ramping up and getting excited about this institutional, food services. People forget that people maybe never knew that our public schools are the largest restaurant chain in the US, if you just looked at the scale, and it's not close. It's like 30 million kids a day. Absolutely, you could combine all the other major chains and you would, I don't even think, get there. It's a really big scale, but they're only, a couple bucks per meal. So it's like a miracle to figure out how to make all that work. So there is a lot of the local farms have wanted to get more into the systems to have some of that, what you're talking about, that regular market. Even if it's not as high margin, you can count on it. And so that's what's been going on. And that $1 billion, doesn't sound like maybe a lot of money when we spend trillions of dollars in the US every year, but it's gone a long way. And I've heard a lot of complaints about that. So just to provide some context there. I want to talk a little bit about greenwashing and how worried any of you are, and as consumers, because you all know how these industries work. When you are shopping, what are you looking for that's not just nonsense BS, like greenwashing? Because you all kind of know what goes into it behind the scenes. I don't know, maybe Steve will start with you.
Yeah. So, we this is a really interesting question and topic. If you make a really good product, you shouldn't have to overdo it on the claims. So we're really careful about our claims. We're frankly, the joke internally at Fruitist in our business is we keep so many great things about our sustainability secret, because there's such a high bar to talking about it, because we want to be serious about our responsibility when we do talk about it. And so I would say that, we're looking for a great product that is not trying to kind of, let's say, get by on claims, but has a really strong sense of purpose in the business and is a business that we think can make an impact. That's a really fun product to buy. I'm kind of describing Fruitist in a lot of ways. That's kind of how we think about our product. I would start with that.
Because you work with, what is it, the Equitable
Food Initiative.
Yeah, it's
EFI.
EFI. I always forget the acronym. Do you look for that on other products? Not berry. I think you're the only berry, right? But do you, because you know what goes into that?
I do.
Is that
I do. It's a hard.
You pay a premium for it. Yeah.
It's a hard one to get.
Because it's more holistic.
Yeah, I mean the bar for us to get that certification was so high. The number of restrictions we have about how we run our operation were very high. But yeah, that is an example of what I would look for. Whether it's if we look though at the back of the product, what's fun is that you've seen a wave now of premiumization in the healthy food area of the grocery store. So whether it's eggs, whether it's whether it's milk, we're certainly looking for those signals of the kind of company that we're trusting with the food that we feed our kids. Yeah,
and I think even though food prices are high, you are seeing more people willing to pay more if they have the disposable income.
There's an absolute willingness to pay. There's different extremes. So our products are available to the masses. We're not selling our products next to champagne, right? But again, if you can buy our products and get a consistent experience, and your kids like it, and they'll put the bag of chips away, and they'll snack healthier, and it'll get them onto a healthier diet overall. They feel better. It's a good, consumers were willing to pay for that. And so our playbook was deliver on the product experience and then start leaning into the brand Fruitist. What Fruitist stands for is really that inspiration. Our mission has been inspiring that healthy and enjoyable snacking. And we think that's the way to get the next generation to snack healthier from a young age.
Kim, how do you think about greenwashing? Because I know that beef is one of those
Yes.
that gets in a little bit of trouble with the claims that are sometimes made about
A lot of what I'm
carbon
doing is just telling stories.
Yeah.
I have literally thrown myself out there. I've done TV, I've done commercials, I've done, you name it. And I think the only way is to have the face of it, to tell the story, and actually have my people in my community tell the story. Because that's what they want. They want to see authentic stories. They want to see the authentic people in it. Because I'll be honest, when it comes to, and I love certifications to a degree, but they're hard for the farmer to get. Sometimes the hoops are just, I'm not going to say impossible, but it just doesn't make it economic valuable for them. But if I tell the story about how this person bought his sharecropper's land and he converted it and he's keeping it going and, he's bringing his kids back in it, that is more value than sometimes organic on it, right? Yeah. So I am going on those, let's say, feel-good stories that make you feel good. And organic's a word that makes you feel good, but what makes you feel good, the organic word or the story of someone that went back home to their land and bought this loan and they converted it back to how they saw their parents running the operation? I think you're going to buy that before you buy something organic.
Yeah.
And that's the key of what Ratcliffe Premium Meats is trying to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kelly, what about you? When you go to a restaurant and you see a bunch of claims about farm to table or local or regenerative, climate smart, climate positive, there's so many, do you think that sometimes people are kind of getting away with a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's all, if you look at all the sort of negative things in our industry and the world, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not for greenwashing, but I'm for the idea of someone kind of putting something out to the world, and it creates accountability. And I think it's up to us to call that out sometimes. But I do think on some level it can be people trying to do the right thing. I think we often use this word greenwashing in our industry, and it's a lot of people don't know, they don't understand what regenerative means.
Yeah.
We don't have a perfect term for that.
We don't have
and
a
I think that greenwashing could kind of fit that category too of what is absolute greenwashing? I think there's extreme examples that we all understand very easily.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm okay for someone to put this out there and then try to get to that as a goal or as a standard, as something to aspire to. So I'm kind of on both sides of it, but I'll call it out too, But yeah, it happens. It's everywhere.
For sure. I remember, there was that story in Florida years ago. Was it Tampa? I can't remember. And there was a food reporter, and she just went to all the farm to table restaurants and looked at the menu and then called up who they said they were sourcing from.
Wow.
And it turned out that 90% of them hadn't been sourcing from those farms for a long time because they didn't want to pay the premium. So they were using the names of the local farms.
Yeah.
And basically, fleecing consumers. I think after that, this was a few years ago, there was a little more let's be a little more careful about making sure that menu's up to date, because it's not it's illegal, but it's not a good look.
Yeah.
And you also don't want someone taking a premium off of someone else's story and then they're not getting the value for it, or that they're not even getting the market. So that's a thing that happens.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask, if you know where the food comes from and someone can say it's coming from this person, that's a really good, that's a really good way to work around some of that.
Yeah, I think it at least indicates that there's thoughtful sourcing instead of, yeah. We have time for questions. If we have questions in the audience, you've got a mic in the back. We're gonna, yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Gripper, and I am the founder of an organization called Land-Based Joints that does education for Black women around agriculture, safety, carpentry, and somatic therapy. My question for y'all is that you talked a little bit about some of the origins and beginnings of your operations. What advice do you have for women farmers and business owners in search of capital and land to grow and expand their work?
Great question.
Capital is always, and capital is the one barrier I say for everything, right? When I first started there was 3 barriers I realized working with my communities: access to capital market and technology. Those are the 3 major barriers that were limiting factor. And it's a ground roots thing. I tell people what I started, I came back home in 2007. I really didn't start really making this meat company in 2020. It took me that long to build a community, build a base, and build a reputation. So access to capital is going to sometimes take that reputation, building a community, and now I have people that want to invest in me. So sometimes it's going to take some groundwork of you eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or bread to make it happen. I didn't even eat my own product because I wanted to sell it before I ate my own product. So when I say access to capital, it's not an easy journey, but it takes showing up to places like this and getting connections, showing up to other places and just taking those monies to make sure you're in the table and at a venue like this so you can get connections to those who have the access and continue telling your story. And once I did get a little access to capital, the best thing I did before really investing into a new building, a new anything, is I invested in a PR and marketing firm. And that PR and marketing firm is the reason why I'm elevated now. I didn't even pay myself that much. I paid my PR and marketing firm before I paid myself a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And that PR marketing firm has put me on global TV, has put me on global places that I never thought I would go to. But it takes those kind of investment, and sometimes it's hard to look at your return on your investment in products like that. Mm-hmm. They're like, what am I getting out of my PR and marketing firm? Because sometimes it's hard to put numbers to that. Mm-hmm. Right? But putting those numbers and matching those teams. But it's a long journey. It's not an overnight. If you just started, it took me 15 years to do it. It didn't take me year 1, but it took me 15 years of grinding and not even eating my own product.
It's a good message to have that candor. We have a question in the front here. Do you have the mic? Yeah.
Hi, I just have a question about artificial meat.
Oh gosh.
I have several venture capital friends who went into it, and they all lost their shirt.
Yes.
And but they don't have a problem with capital nor technology. I was just wondering, somebody so passionate.
And I think we all can talk on this stuff.
I was wondering what your reaction about this industry is, because the optimism, actually, at least in Asia, is practically gone.
Yeah, and I think it is a dying thing. I think it's one of those things, just like oyster eggs, right? Everyone thought that was the key to the egg industry at one point, and everyone was investing in these eggs that were large. I really do believe that the label is the key to reason why it's not successful, right? People are looking at labels to a degree when you could say mine is just beef. There's nothing else in it, right? But when you get these, I guess I don't even know what to call them. But imitation meat.
I'll give you the.
I call it imitation meat. When you get imitation meat, then the labels and what they have to do to get that done is just what people and consumers and parents and mothers and all that are concerned about. So the label's going to be and also, and I work heavily in a lot of different organizations within the beef industry. For us, it's making sure it's not labeled what it says. It's like they want to label it like the milk industry got in trouble by labeling things soy milk and labeling things all these milk products. We're just trying to avoid that also, which is going to help us from eliminating it. Make sure you can't call it something in beef in its title. So making it sure that it's not labeled is another fighting battle that we're trying to win to prevent it from going any further.
Just want to add one thing. I think this is a good question. In fact, last time I was here at this event, there was a huge tent, and it was Beyond Burger and Impossible Foods, the burger. Was anyone else here for that? And we tasted them all for the first time. I think it was maybe version 2. It was kind of like software, right? They kept updating and for those products, they have to have a lot of ingredients. Mm-hmm. They have to have a lot of, and it is technically and ultra processed food, which is one of the things that's taking a lot of heat right now. So you have that, and then you also have all the cell cultivated stuff, which was actually trying to grow animal cells in outside the animal, right? Which is, and they're doing that with seafood. Actually, there was just a seafood company that got FDA approval like a couple of weeks ago. But it just that the mechanics of it, the technology just doesn't scale economically. Even though it is so hard to raise animals, that's still easier than what they were trying to do, which is
easy.
in these vats. Yeah.
That's what I tell people. Food production of your food, you don't want it easy necessarily, right? You want to have that process of natural creation of your food.
Yeah.
You don't want to, and that's the other thing I always talk about. I want those stages, right? I want the baby stage all the way to the mature stage.
Yeah.
So.
But there's like two pressures on it. It's the consumer perception of the processing that's like kind of bedeviling the plant-based folks right now. And then it's the actual feasibility of the cell-cultivated stuff, which I think had a lot of excitement in Asia, a lot of VC. I mean, I think in the US, we had $2 billion go into just cell-cultivated. And I think that has all but collapsed at this point. We have a few companies left, but you can't buy it anywhere in the US right now. Mm-hmm. Like even the restaurant in DC where Jose Andres like launched with, which one was it? Just Foods to do the cell-cultivated chicken. Like a handful of reporters, we got to go eat it. I don't know what that was. Maybe that's that's the lunch bell. We got to go eat it, and
don't leave yet.
Yeah, and then it just disappeared, and it's because it's so expensive to produce that they were losing money. Forget the 4-year wait for the blueberries. At least the blueberries are coming, right? But they have not figured out what that path to production is. And there will be so many case studies written about, I think, that industry. And maybe it was too early and the technology doesn't quite work. I don't know. But yeah, that answers your question. We have time for one more question, even though the lunch bell rang. Yes, back you.
Hi, thank you. I have a question for Kelly. I completely agree that nothing is better than going to a restaurant and having an incredible meal. I know that inspires me to then cook something seasonally or go to the farmer's market. And I also know, as you have all talked about, that labels like organic are really expensive, and certain parts in the world, like France, you can get a lot of organic stuff that just doesn't have the label. At the same time, I live in DC, and it seems like there's a restaurant closing every week because of really expensive costs. How, as a restaurant owner, do you price your menu when, would you rather work with a local farmer you know is organic but doesn't have the label, or is it important to have the label so that, someone goes and says, oh, this says it's organic, chicken, I will pay more for that menu item?
Yeah, I'll try to answer this, what I think you're asking here. But, this is, yes, of course, we know our farmers. This is probably another conversation we mentioned, net positive. The way we think about food is very circular. So, when it comes to our food costs, I don't think that's the number one reason restaurants are closing. I think it has a lot to do with other things right now. We run really good food costs because I realized a few years ago that chefs, they like making things. They don't like sitting and looking at spreadsheets. So when I started teaching food waste, all of our food costs across our company dropped 10%. They were making, leftover wine into vinegar and all these things. So we're able to serve very localized food, very organic, very, and I think you kind of touched on this waste aspect of things. So being efficient with our time, and with the ingredients and things like that really creates that. I think it's important, if you don't know your farmer, that these, again, certifications, I buy organic. It's a really quick shot to understanding what food I would want to feed my kids or something. So I don't think that I avoid that on any level. But no, my favorite farmer is one from LA, Alex Weiser. He is a staple in Los Angeles. And when you go to the Santa Monica Farmers Market and you talk to him and he tells you the same thing, I don't have these certifications or whatever. I trust this guy through and through. I know exactly what he's doing with his farm at all times. And I can go to his farm. The transparency is key. So, visiting that and being, talking to your farmer, knowing where the things are from is the best path for you to buy and support and get around this like larger conversation. I don't know if that answers it. Is that okay? And I love the DC food scene right now, and it's happening in Denver too. My favorite restaurants are closing every day right now, and but I'm not sure that using localized food is the issue.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in DC too. I hear lots of complaints about like rent costs and
It's a lot of things.
terrible landlords, and then labor. I mean, yeah, but it's probably more complex, I think, to your point.
Yeah.
So on that note, I am not going to keep you from lunch. Thank you so much to the panel. Please come talk to them. Thank you all so much.